We come from all over the country.
We come from different schools.
We have different majors.
But we are all dedicated to tackling public problems
and being engaged in our community.
Through the Newman Civic Fellowship, we develop our leadership skills.
And together we form a network of engaged student leaders.
We are the next generation of public problem solvers.
And these are our voices.
The social issue that keeps me up at night would be hunger.
The sort of educational disparities that students across the country face.
Particularly domestic violence and intimate partner abuse.
Long-term recovery, especially when referring to the refugee community.
The systems of oppression that are placed upon our Black and brown students across America.
The impact of Hurricane Maria on the island of Puerto Rico, which is where a lot of my family is from and still lives.
Foster care and adoption, because I was in foster care.
This social issue is the most pressing for me because the oppression that it causes on our students creates a mentality that is ingrained in them from a very young age that they are not worth anything, but they are.
Omaha, where I'm from, it's a growing metropolitan area. But even though it's growing and prospering, we still have all those problems.
So domestic violence was a major problem in my household for a number of years. Since it is such a personal issue to me, it really reminds me that so many more women around the world, and even in my local communities, are affected by the same kind of violence.
And for college, I went to a university that really provided me a lot of opportunities. And so every time that I came across a new opportunity, I was really excited about that new opportunity, but I really thought about how there was no access for other people in the community that I came from to these sort of things. But the more that I became aware of these things, the more it is that I wanted to do something about it. And I saw I learned about this, just how many different ways that one can get involved in the field of education to be able to create a more equitable system.
The one thing I've noticed about the refugee community is that all the programs that are implemented are short-term and have short-term goals such as providing shelter, and what is really lacking is the long-term focus on resettlement, which would include formal education, training the refugee population, and giving them vocational training so they can have a career once they're out of these refugee camps.
Puerto Rico, of course, is a part of the United States. They're all American citizens. They don't have a lot of agency and ability that states do, so they kind of are at the whims of our elected officials.
Imagine yourself a 5-year-old child deprived of all the most basic supplements. That's the situation my grandparents grew up in Vietnam. I don't want anybody else to have to go through the same thing that my grandparents had to.
So the work I'm doing in order to address domestic violence and violence against women at large is to develop a youth support network in terms of a sisterhood to address domestic violence in terms of young women in particular. As a young woman myself, I never had a support network of other young women I could talk to.
There are so many ways to become involved. I think that a lot of the work has to be done in community. It has to be done on the ground. So I've done a lot of work working with youth one-on-one, whether it's teaching and tutoring and developing relationships with students in order to be able to allow themselves to see themselves as learners, to see themselves as people who have knowledge and who can grow and can develop as individuals.
So currently I work with the refugee community and at-risk population here in the US. So we work with children in Houston who are suffering from mental illnesses, are homeless, or are coming from dysfunctional families, and we provide them with social emotional programs. And once they have that capacity to really have resilience and hope, we connect them to refugees who are living across the border. And what we've noticed is once we provide both groups with social emotional learning, they start to help one another. And while they're helping one another, they're really using their critical understanding to really implement changes in their own community.
I've created a nonprofit organization called the Tree of Life Youth Mentoring Program. It is a program that has partnered with the University of Verne, in which we train our undergraduate students to critically mentor underserved youth in our communities.
On campus, I am part of a new student group that we founded a few years ago, which aims to help raise awareness about the field of urban planning and policy among Latinx communities and communities of color. But I also attend community meetings really regularly in my neighborhood. I go to Puerto Rican Agenda meetings, I go to zoning meetings, any sort of public spaces that invite us to come talk about things that are affecting our communities.
So right now I'm interning at the Congressional Coalition on Adoption Institute, and so what we do is we educate Congress on issues that are affecting foster youth and adopted youth. So I guess my ultimate dream is to work with the United Nations on humanitarian issues.
I am a Newman Civic Fellow.
I am a Newman Civic
I am
Fellow.
a Newman Civic Fellow.
I am a public problem solver.
I am a public problem
I'm
solver.
a public problem solver.
I am a public problem solver.
I am taking bold action.
I am taking bold action.
I am taking bold action.